What's up, guys? This is Dad Stories. My name's Travis. My dad's name was Chris. We called him Chris. He told us to call him Chris when I was about 4 years old, and he was a badass. He was the last of a dying breed. True man. I watch movies now, westerns, and it's funny. I feel like I'm hearing my dad speak. I hear his voice. I see his style, the way he carried himself. But everybody was scared to death of him, including me. But everybody was drawn to him. Everybody just wanted to, everyone wanted to make him proud. Everyone tried to please him. I could have saved them all 40 years worth of time and effort and told them it was impossible. But it didn't matter. I have two older sisters. Their boyfriends, whenever they would come over to the house, unrelentingly tried to impress my dad, and because you just want to be around a man like that. When you meet a man like that, you want to be around him, you want to associate with him, and but there's a price that comes with it, and it's looking stupid constantly, and it's being embarrassed. It's also, you risk being ashamed, but if you wear that well, that's what turns you into a man. And if you can take it, and the more you expose yourself and are around men like that, the better of one you become. So this is a story about the Drumsticks. We had some property on a road called Straight Gut Road. It was near my house, the home I grew up in. We bought 80 acres not far from our house that my dad used only to hunt on. Originally had planned to build a house on it and retire, but for the first 10 years we had it, just turned out to be a place we would ride four-wheelers, shoot guns, target practice, hunt, you name it. And by the time I had turned 16, turned out to be a piece of property that we knew we could go to. By the time I got old enough that I could buy my own four-wheeler, because I sure as hell did not use my dad's around the age of 18, started being able to go and ride four-wheelers. Of course, that was not without or before a full 16-hour workday. You know, that property for a long time, it seemed to be used as punishment for me more than it was anything to enjoy. It was after spending my week after school Monday through Friday at the sawmill, you know, stacking logs, shoveling sawdust, servicing heavy equipment, or on a log home build site doing slave labor. Saturdays meant work on the property, putting up fence, building cross-tie retaining walls to dam up water so we could have places to I guess irrigate for a food plot, to hunt deer, you name it. It was just always something, but I enjoyed it more because it was kind of my dad delegating responsibility to me. You know, he'd give me a job, then he'd leave. It wasn't there at the sawmill where it was, you know, life or death. If you screw up, you're going to get drop a 200-pound log on your foot and shatter it, or cut yourself in half with a 54-inch resaw, cutting specialty beams for a log home package. Either way, we would go over to this property, and the reward for working over there was being able just to ride the four-wheelers. We'd cut trails. My best friends at the time, Ben and Richard, any girls we could meet in town that we could get back over there with us to drink and party. It gave us a safe place to go where we could drink responsibly. We'd camp out, ride four-wheelers all day, cook that evening, stay that night. Won't tell you anything else about that happened over there, except for Richard Campbell's laser light shows. That's another story for another time. But what ended up happening is, over time, as we would go over to this property and party, my inner circle of buddies and whoever from town we could get to come over started having our party time overlap with my dad and his two buddies. He had two best friends named Paul Plumley and Harold Stinnett. Paul Plumley owns the Rib and Loin Barbecue Restaurant in Chattanooga. My dad and him were like brothers. In fact, I had a man crush on this guy the first time I met him, and to this day could not understand or ever see what he and my dad had in common, or how they could even be friends. My dad was a Liberty overall wearing, Chevy truck driving, didn't say 5 words when 2 words will do. Just Southern gentleman, badass working man, blue collar as they come. And Paul Plumley, the first time I met him was on a Saturday. Just knew that we were working until he got there because they were going to go ride 4-wheelers that afternoon. And I just knew when I saw somebody pull up there at the mill with a 4-wheeler on a trailer meant work was over. And it was a 1997 Infiniti QX4 with a brand new trailer on the back and the brand new Kawasaki 700 V-twin Prairie 4-wheeler, which just was jaw-dropping to me. Just seeing, you know, the $60,000 black shiny SUV, which was my dream car then, just barrel up through the mill in a dust cloud, and Paul get out of it. I had no idea who this guy was. Back seat laid down, bottle of moonshine and a chainsaw with bar lube dripping out of it in the back seat of this thing, brand new. And just, you know, all the mannerisms and characteristics of my dad, and the same type of man, but with money, a lot of money. And for some reason they clicked. But their older buddy, Harold Stinnett, was actually how they kind of got partnered up together. An old timer, lived down in Subligna, Georgia. Family had hundreds of acres down there, and that's how he and Paul met. Paul would go down there and hunt it. My dad did too. Harold was their mutual friend, and between the three of them, that is actually how we get our name for the ranch out in Colorado. Those of you who know me and the place I spend my summers outside of Gunnison in the Sawatch Valley, we call it the Lucky 3 Ranch. That was my dad, Chris Walden, Paul Plumley, and Harold Stinnett. So that is a real name, and there is a real story to how it came to be. And there were an original Lucky 3. That's another story for another time too, how they got the place out west. It's a really cool story. But back to this one. As our party time started to overlap there on our property off of Straight Gut Road, we kind of started realizing that, okay, things are happening with my inner circle that does not need to be shared story time between my dad and Paul and Harold. Especially, I could tell when my dad started trying to get me to fix up some of my older teenage gal friends with Paul, who was a ladies' man. And I could tell these two worlds did not need to overlap any further. They started going to Harold's property, which was did not have anything really set up for camping. It had an old lean-to built up, I think, with a couple of tarps hanging off the back, and a little makeshift bench and just a fire ring. That was it. Of course, Paul having the money that he had, and of course us manufacturing log homes for the 40 years we did, the two of them partnered up together, my dad and Paul, and on Harold's property down there in Subligna built a cabin, which was a, so to speak, hunting cabin, around 4,000 modest square feet, and just an absolute ski lodge of a hunting cabin out in the middle of the woods. And only got dried in, that was it. Never really furnished. It was just a really big room, log building to go in and congregate, have a group to be able to lay out cots and sleep. We'd use it to go down there and hunt. But of course, unlike the property where we had on Straight Gut Road, where anybody in Lafayette that would come to it and party with us around a campfire would come, Harold's property was a little more inner circle for a couple of reasons. Obviously, it was not mine to invite people to, and number two, it was further away. It was a good little 30-45 minute drive. So to go there meant a couple of things. Gathering up enough things that you were going to be there all day, or camping overnight. And also too, family more oriented with those of us who were immediate family, nieces and nephews, not really just any, swinging dick in town that was a cool guy with a hot girlfriend we wanted to try to get from him, or had cool trucks, hunting buddies, guys interested in guns, or girls that were willing to come hang out in the woods for a night and camp out. So being that we're getting older, your circle becomes smaller. I ended up after becoming married, my son was born, and around this time, I guess he was about probably 5 or 6, really young, but around the age I start introducing him to firearms, long guns, no pistols, just keeping him around him, and especially going with me whenever I would go shoot, and also hunting. So he had been down to Harold's deer camp a couple of times. We'd stayed in the cabin, and as my dad got older and of course diagnosed with congestive heart failure, became something he was doing less. So it got to be a really big deal whenever my dad would get up the the condition that he could go down there, and especially if he could ride a 4-wheeler or shoot guns. It had to be ideal weather. He had to all his medications had to be kind of lined up, and him feeling really good to go. So one particular Saturday, real pretty afternoon, we get to talking early that morning. My dad says, hey, let's load up the 4-wheelers and get the guns. And something that had become important to him at his older age was getting these boys outdoors. Other than my son, the other nieces and nephews were the type that every time my dad was around them or saw him, had a phone in their face or a tablet or a game pad or something, and just really kind of bothered him. And as my dad got older, felt the need to expose these boys to more. And of course, their dads weren't around. If they were, in a couple of the situations that they didn't really have ATVs or razors and side-by-sides or anything like that, or if so, didn't have the land to go ride them. So that was kind of a cool thing my dad had extended himself out there to do. But keep in mind, it was his bag. I had my son. We were close. Whenever I wanted to do things like this, it was him and me. I didn't bring in a crew of 5 other boys to babysit. And so I told my dad, I said, listen, you want to do that? It's all fine and good, but in my truck, responsible for just myself and Tuscan, the 2 of us will be separate, and we'll meet you guys down there. But what do you have in mind? So, of course, my oldest sister, Rachel, she has 2 boys. Their names are Liam and Connor. My younger sister, Paige, she has 2 boys, Dakota and Lane. Dakota, of course, who is the son of Mikey Crawford, just like Mikey, has kind of had a rough go of it. He's kind of followed in Mikey's footsteps. He's a great guy. He'll give you the shirt off his back. He's loyal and loves his family, but not a worker, not a hustler, not the sharpest tool in the shed. We love him, but that's the thing, say no to drugs, kids. That's all I can tell you. He needs all the brain cells he can get, and he's been on a couple of murdering sprees with the brain cells. So same with Mikey. Love him to death, but that's the thing, when you don't have that kind of drive or motivation, you better have a skill set. He doesn't have a skill set, and so when you don't have either of those, you just kind of bounce around, and it's all you can do to stay out of trouble. You don't have a lot of outside activities to get into, except for just trying to stay out of jail. So whenever something like this goes down, and there's 4-wheelers getting loaded up and guns, and we're going to go shoot and have us a big Saturday out in the woods, obviously that's something Mikey wants to attach himself to, or anyone else who has driven through the mill that day or gotten wind of it, to go along. So as Dakota and Lane are delegated with loading up 4-wheelers, I'm teaching them to strap them down. They're about the age we can trust them to do that. An important job, but again, one that I have given them, not one that my dad has. And hooking up trailers, getting everything ready. Then of course I'm handling all the guns, loading them up, making sure, and putting my son in charge of gathering up our ammo, things that I can tell and kind of oversee directly since he's my boy. Everything is going well, and we're at the mill where we can all kind of meet at a central location. Jamie is also lined up to go with us, who is my sister's boyfriend. And this is the sister who was married and the ex-wife of Mikey. long after they've been divorced and not a couple. And in fact, Mikey and Jamie are even buddies. Mikey pulls up. Mikey pulls up like he was known to do on some Saturdays because, again, you know, if you're out of jail and it's during the day, you need money for drugs that night to party, the one guy you could always come to for work or an opportunity to make some cash under the table quick was my dad. Because that's the one thing there always is at the mill too, is work. There's always sawdust to shovel. There's always a piece of equipment needs to be serviced. There's always work. My dad just raised me to know that there's never not work. You can always pick up a broom and sweep. I don't care where you're at or what you're doing for a living. You can always, by God, pick up a broom and sweep a floor. And that's just how I was raised. But all that aside, Mikey figures, I guess, if he shows up at the mill, maybe something he can do to jump into some money. And of course, it's the one Saturday a year we're not working or doing something down there that Mikey would fall ass backwards into, you know, $100 that day to help out with. So as he sees us loading up the four-wheelers, and of course, two boys that never get to see or hang out with their dad are obviously going to want him to come along. So Mikey does. He starts getting ready to head out with us. And as this is going on, my dad starts wanting to delegate out more jobs. He feels good enough that he thinks he might want to camp and stay the night. Great. We're excited. Sounds like it's going to be a big time now. But to anyone else that may be excited for that, all I see, and the trained eye to Chris Walden and the things that he wants, sees this as an opportunity for something to completely go sideways and screw up, which, as I had mentioned earlier in my story, you do not want to be around. So I told him, I said, well, Tuscan and I, my son, you can see here, are not going to be staying the night or camping. We will be coming back home. But yeah, shoot, let's go. We'll ride the four-wheelers and shoot guns for the afternoon, and then later on that night, before I get too drunk, we will have time to sober up and drink some water. We're going to come back to the house. So with all four nieces and nephews, and actually a couple of their buddies in tow, and then my son Tuscan, Jamie, and my dad. Now Mikey has shown up. He's going to go too. Here we all get ready to go, and just as we're pulling out, my dad decides, hey, everybody has got coolers, beers on ice, we have drinks. No one has done anything for food. So right at the last minute, rolls the window down where he has put Dakota in my dad's old Chevy truck with him to drive, because he's still on his oxygen tank and it's kind of hard for him to handle his manual 5-speed stick shift in this truck. Rides up alongside me and is trying to throw $100 bills at me to go to Walmart and grocery shop for this group of 9 guys who are going to be out there riding four-wheelers all day and shooting guns, drinking, and then of course camping that night, food for the next morning. I'm not staying for that. I told him, nope, sorry, not your guy. Because at least now in my older age, I've gotten to the point where I could tell my dad to fuck off. I don't do busy work. So that being said, and looking at the situation at hand, he has one option for grocery shopping, and it is to send Dakota in to the Walmart or the Bilo, wherever it is they go. So I think my dad could even tell that I was avoiding a situation that I could only screw up. There's no way it could be done right. Whatever you do for my dad, a job he gives you that is not written down in detail, verbatim, you will not perform correct, I can guarantee. So without having a list already pre-made out of everything down to the exact brand and quantity that he would want me to purchase, no, I'm not signing up for this. So we proceed to pull out, four-wheelers behind us, everyone together in a convoy. But here my dad and Dakota break off onto a separate direction, headed towards the Walmart to grocery shop. My dad has probably been in a Walmart twice in his life. Once was probably by mistake, and the second time I know of for a fact is when he needed a straw hat on our way to go tubing down the river, and he would go through a straw hat once a month on the way in a hurry, walked into a Walmart to get one, straight to it and back out. So not the grocery shopping type, if you get the picture. I know and can see without even being there what is happening. My dad has told my nephew Dakota to go into this grocery store, buy groceries for 9 guys out in the woods, and then to just handle it. Which even me at the age of 40 is not something I'm looking forward to doing, and probably wouldn't have done. And Dakota, an 18-year-old who's really never done anything right in his life, now has this job. And which I love him to death, and he knows I'll say it to his face, and none of these things are a secret in our family or the county for that matter. But nevertheless, we part ways and we go. So once we get down to the property, everyone starts unloading, and of course, you know, boys will be boys. They're wanting to immediately break off, ride four-wheelers, shoot up the woods, and just raise hell. So of course, you know, we have to crack the whip on them, tell them, nope, you know, that's half of the reason we're out here. We're teaching you boys how to do this shit. No, we're going to get our beds made, we're going to unload the groceries. There's a certain order of things that need to get done, and having fun is last. So they start unloading groceries and taking them into the cabin, just setting them down on the counter. You know, we have a big prep counter for cooking and preparing food, even though everything happens on the grill outside. I see these bags and bags, one after another, going into the kitchen. I'm not inspecting or not looking to see what they are, don't really care. My son and I, in true, you know, country boy fashion, for the Saturday out in the woods in a situation we don't want to cook, went to the favorite market, which is, to you guys, as you would probably know it, the Mapco. We get us chicken fingers, potato logs, and biscuits, throw them in a box. There you go, food for days. No need to cook it, just as good cold as it is hot, and we're ready to go. And even with a box with a carry handle, we're set. So I'm not too interested about what is in these bags. I don't feel the need to look, but what has struck me as super strange is that while every boy is carrying a bag into the kitchen of the cabin from the truck, has in one hand a Nestle ice cream cone. Vanilla, chocolate covered ice cream with peanuts, the waffle cone, you name it, you've seen them and know what they are. And I'm thinking, wow, how in the hell did these get bought? Because the backstory on this, for you guys who do not know my dad, is that's something I never had in my life until Mayfield put them out into the schools for lunch as dessert. A Mayfield Sundae cone, never bought them. They weren't in my house. We didn't have them. My dad had an obsession with any sort of sticky candy bullshit that you could give a kid, have him run around the property with it, dripping off his elbow, all over his face and hands, and then touching doorknobs. You didn't want to be in the house or handling a doorknob that my dad had to go through, that when he put his hand on it was sticky from Jolly Ranchers, bubble gum, or felt like somebody had just, you know, blown wet cotton candy all over it and let it dry. It pissed him off. And so how all of these Sundae cones and Nestle waffle cone, chocolate covered ice cream, peanut covered deals are in every hand of every boy running around except for mine. I'm wondering how these even got bought. And of course they're not going to last 10 minutes. Of course my son, which broke my heart to do, asks if he can have one, and there's just too much going on, and I can tell something is up. I can't put my finger on it, but it's just not right, and I had to tell him no. And but in telling him no, I did bend down and whisper into his ear. I was like, trust me, you'll be glad later you did not have one of these damn things. Something's not right with this picture. So, you know, poor Tuscan kicks rocks. You know, we end up getting on the four-wheeler and all is well. The afternoon goes by. We shoot guns. Everyone had a big time. We're riding four-wheelers. Nobody rolled a four-wheeler. Nobody got shot. So about that evening, you know, 5 or 6 o'clock rolls around, and it's time for us to build a fire. We have it going. My dad's poured him a glass of whiskey, and everything is set up. The boys did well. We had gathered up enough kindling and firewood. In fact, there was some still there from previous trips. We get the fire going enough that Mikey, myself, and Jamie. 3 of us are standing in a row. My dad's sitting in his chair with a glass of whiskey. Tells the boys it's time to start cooking. Go in there and get our groceries. I'm sure you've got some pork chops and some drumsticks. The look on Dakota Crawford's face when he knew that he had to go into this cabin and produce drumsticks, chicken leg drumsticks, and he did not buy any, and there were 0, was priceless. So priceless. In fact, what is even more priceless than that was the look on his dad's face. Mikey, his own flesh and blood, his son, completely disowned. We Homer Simpsoned into the darkness behind us, disappeared into the bushes. No help from us whatsoever. It was it was like watching your son drown and watching him not throwing him a raft or any sort of flotation device. It was, oh wow, it was brutal. And Dakota, we sat there and watched him. I guess he thought they would fabricate out of thin air. Maybe he could think them into existence. If God was ever going to turn Nestle drumstick ice cream cones into chicken legs, this was the time, and it didn't happen. Not for Dakota. He searched through the bags. He pulled out everything as if they were there and they didn't put them in the bag, or he bought them and they forgot to put them in. He pulls out 1 pack of pork chops with 4 small pork chops in it, and I hear my dad say, "What the hell? Damn, boy, where's the drumsticks? Where's the grub? Let's get the food going. We got the grill. There's the fire." He said, "Let's get it go." He said, "I told you to get drumsticks." And Dakota says he knows that all the drumsticks that were bought were covered in chocolate and peanuts and gaudy and are now melted and running down the elbows and dripping off of every little boy there hours earlier, and they were not in the form of chicken at all. Hence there being no supper that night for any of them, or for that morning, for that reason the next morning. It was epic. And I understand it was definitely one of those you have to be there moments, but we love telling that story so much and remembering how Dakota picked up Nestle drumsticks instead of chicken leg drumsticks. That Chris Walden's idea of drumsticks will and never would have been in a million years Nestle ice cream cones. To him, that was always a chicken leg, and that was his idea of, what to have for supper that night after a day of shooting guns and riding four-wheelers. So that's the drumstick story. I hope you guys liked it. I've got a lot more. These are stories I've been wanting to tell and get out somewhere documented, because I've been told by a couple others they like to hear me tell them. I guess I'm the only real connection left to anything like that that would have happened with Chris Walden, and there was a lot from being his son, working with him, being raised to become a man, and just eventually being alongside him as a friend in the woods and doing shit like this, and ultimately getting to watch other people screw up in front of him instead of me. I actually take I get a lot of joy from. So yeah, more stories later. Thanks, guys.